Hey everybody, welcome back. I am going to attempt to do a catch-up video today and talk about things that I've read since August. Oh gosh, well, maybe even July. And maybe I've talked about one or two of these. I think maybe one of them. I don't know anymore. Anyway, I'm not going to go really deep on any of these because of time. So one of two things I think, well, let me know in the comments if you want me to go into more detail about any of these books, and I will be happy to do like a review video. Yeah, that would definitely work. I could do that. One of the things that I'm kicking around because I'm not very smart is the possibility of like maybe getting my blog back up and running and or maybe like doing a Substack where I could do more detailed reviews of books and kind of go into more, of the nitty gritty and instead of just doing like sort of like glossy reviews. So glossy. Oh, okay. Uh, anyway, so yeah, I'm not sure about that yet. I'm thinking about it just because, I've just got so much time. I manage my time so well too. I'm so good at that. That's why I'm so consistent with videos. Mhm. So, but that's neither here nor there. And I want to talk about these books a little bit and yeah, tell you what I've been reading because I've read some really great and or interesting books since July. And it's November. It's the middle of November. Yeah, okay. So the first one, I think I talked about this one already actually. And if I have, forgive me. My memory is sucks and I'm not going to go back and watch my own videos to figure it out because why would I? Um, but I read The Vegetarian by Han Kang. Han Kang. I think it's Han Kang. I think I watched some videos and things. I looked up how to pronounce her name correctly, and I believe that's right. Uh, this just blew me absolutely out away. I was so impressed with this, you can see, and like I have many things underlined and notes and uh this is a difficult book to read. This is a book about a woman who stops eating. Well, she pretty much stops eating she stops eating any animal. She stops eating meat, she stops eating any flesh, she stops eating the South Koreans don't eat a lot of dairy, but she stops eating anything but vegetables, and then at some point she absolutely just stops eating altogether. And it's told from three different points of view, never her point of view. The first section is her husband, the second section is her brother-in-law, and the third section is her sister. And it moves through time from when she makes the decision to stop eating, and it then follows her on this journey. But we see this journey through these different people as they project different things onto her motives. Um, she doesn't really she doesn't really talk. It comes out, in the story that there's a great deal of societal pressure to conform, that she has a lot of family pressure to be a certain way and to act a certain way. And that society, the pressure that society puts on women to be a certain way. We also learn about this through her sister, um, about who owns the right to somebody else's body, to their image, to their experience, to what happens when those experiences get turned into something for consumption themselves, like in the form of art. It's such a deep book. It's such a small book. and it's just absolutely completely deep. It's gripping. It was a pretty quick read in the sense of except that I didn't want to read it quickly. And so I really tried to keep myself at like a pretty deliberate pace in terms of making sure that I was kind of even going back and rereading some things so I was really getting what was going on. But I think it's definitely a book that bears rereading. And this, so because I enjoyed this, I bought her book Greek Lessons, which I had put up in my Shorty September video as a possibility. But now I'm going to be buddy reading that with Allie, the avid reader, who is a great BookTube supporter, and is, you know, a great commenter. She's been a BookTube prize judge, so a lot of you know who she is. So we're going to be reading that sometime early in 2026. We're going to buddy read that. So this is excellent. Just really astounding in terms of structure, in terms of language, in terms of what she does. I can completely see why she won the Nobel Prize just based on one book, and that's pretty impressive. The next book, so I think I talked about this way back in July. This was my read good pick for August, and it was to read a book by a Booker Prize winning author, but not necessarily the book that won the Booker. And so I had chosen, because I had this on my shelf already. I'd had it on my shelf for a really long time, actually. I brought this with me from Atlanta. This is Michael Ondaatje, and this is his book Warlight. And this was the first book by Michael Ondaatje that I have read. I did not read his Booker winning prize novel, The English Patient. And I told you that I completely Elained the movie, so there's that. Yes, we're using Elaine as a verb now. And but this was absolutely fantastic. I loved this. And again, tabs, more underlining. The language in this book is beautiful. The storytelling, the pacing. This is a story about a boy and his sister. They are in their, I think when the book starts, they're in their, I think he's 13 and she's 15. I can't remember exactly, but it's right after the end of World War II in London, and their father takes a job in Taiwan, I believe. No, Singapore. He takes a job in Singapore, and then their mother is planning to go with him, and go meet with him and go live in Singapore while the kids are going to stay in England and go to boarding school. And she leaves them. There's a boarder that lives in their house, and she kind of, you know, leaves the house entrusted to this boarder and goes to Singapore. And the kids go off to boarding school, but they both hate boarding school. And so they end up going back home to live with this boarder. And the boarder kind of lets them do this. And it turns out that there's, you know, it being right after World War II, there's a lot going on. There's still a lot of black market things still going on. They're trying to rebuild London, but people are still, you know, there's food shortages and all kinds of things that still need to be rebuilt. And so the young man in the book, I'm calling him the young man because I can't remember the main character's name. Nathaniel and Rachel. So Nathaniel, he's 14. It just said that on the flap. So Nathaniel ends up kind of, he's going to school, but he also ends up kind of in this world. And so does Rachel. They kind of end up in this working with this shadowy underground. Nathaniel takes some different jobs. You know, some of the things are clearly not on the up and up. But the book is framed by an older Nathaniel who is now a writer, and he's looking back at this time, and he's looking back at what happened and how their mother basically just leaves, and they don't hear from her. She's gone. She's almost completely disappeared. They don't actually know if she's with their father, if something else has happened, but they just kind of go on living their lives, but they start to form a family with this boarder, and then with some of the other people who end up coming into the house and who are always there. and they have this kind of weird makeshift family, even as Nathaniel and his sister kind of grow apart, based around things that happen. I don't want to say too much, but it is a wonderful, beautiful, melancholy look from Nathaniel's point of view at the post World War II London, at his family, and really in a way the dissolution of one family, and who he becomes and how that shapes him as an adult, and the things that he learns about his mother through the border and through some of the things that happen, in the book, and what it says about him and who he is. It's just beautifully written, absolutely gorgeous prose. I will definitely be picking up more of Michael Ondaatje's work now. Because I was just thoroughly impressed by this book. Just wonderful. All right. The next book was my first book that I read for Shorty September. I also buddy read this with Allie. And this is Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica Au. And this is a slim little book. Really beautiful writing. I'm not sure if this is autofiction or if it's in any way autobiographical. I know that Jessica Au is, she is a Chinese, she's Chinese by ethnicity, but she grew up in Australia and was educated in Australia. And this is the same as the protagonist of this novel. The protagonist in this novel, who is not named, invites her mother to take a vacation with her to Japan. She has arranged the vacation for her and her mother. The protagonist is probably, I think she's in her 30s. I think she's in her early 30s. Her mother, I think, is in her 70s. The protagonist also has an older sister. And like Al, the protagonist lives in Australia. Her parents had emigrated to Australia, and her mother ended up returning to China, as did her sister. And her mother and her sister are somewhat close because her sister is married and has children. She's a doctor. She's a practicing physician in China. And the mother is close to the grandchildren, and she's moved to an apartment to be closer to them. But the protagonist in this book wants to have a relationship with her mother, and she's trying to, I think, somehow connect with her. So they go on this vacation together, but it's very strange little book, because the protagonist has made all of these plans for these things for her and her mother to do, for these sites for them to go see, for galleries for them to visit. But at each place they go, really, instead of talking to her mother about like what her mother is thinking and feeling, she sort of takes on this role almost of like an educator. Everywhere they go, she, ends up lecturing her mother about the art or about the history or about the place. And her mother sort of just passively takes in this information. And as the daughter she's sort of disappointed by this. She's sort of disappointed that her mother really is like, oh, okay, I think I'll go back to the hotel and take a nap. Kind of, she does not feeling like she's getting the connection that she wants. And so, as she's thinking about this, and as she's also kind of going back in her mind about her own life and her own education, and about how much she wanted to have a formal education, how much she wanted to learn, how much she felt she didn't know, about a relationship that she ends up having with a professor, like a professional relationship, or a student, a mentorship that she ends up having with a professor that she greatly admires, about a job that she has in a restaurant, and all of these experiences that she has, about her boyfriend, who is Australian, and his father, who is a famous artist, a famous sculptor, and just about sort of, it's really about her, I think, trying to figure out where she belongs in the world, and what culture she belongs to, and what she is going to prioritize. It's a fascinating little book. Allie and I both agreed that neither one of us necessarily liked the protagonist here. but we understood what she was doing and the struggle she was having, uh, but found her somewhat a little difficult, I would say. Um, but the writing itself is gorgeous. It's a nice little meditation, and I think it's another one of those books that bears rereading. I think you could get a lot out of it, probably on a second read as well. And since I'm mentioning Allie, I have to also give her a huge thank you and a shout out because she very, very kindly sent me, unprompted, this beautiful book, this collected poetry of Mary Oliver's collected poetry, Devotions, because I had said that in 2026 I wanted to read more poetry and I had mentioned Mary Oliver. And so she offered to buy this book for me as a thank you. And it's really, I owe her the thanks and I owe all of you the thanks. And if I was really like a gazillionaire, I would wish I could buy everybody who visits a book. I wish I could do that for you. And so thank you so much, Allie. I cannot wait to read this in 2026. I can't wait to dip in and out of this and really kind of, this is just such a kind thing. I can't say enough. It's just, yeah, I get a little, yeah. Thank you, Allie. It's beautiful. I love it. Looking forward to that. So you'll hear more about it in 2026 because I'll be talking about poems. Who am I? The next book I read for Shorty September was The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. This was my first Muriel Spark. And I wasn't sure what to expect. It was not what I expected at all. I mean, I did expect it to be witty, and it was. And it was, the plot's pretty straightforward. Miss Jean Brodie is a teacher. She's a single woman who teaches at a girls' school, and she has kind of I guess she must be in her 30s, and she's got her favorites that she kind of collects around her, and she doesn't really teach them. Or what she's teaching them is not the curriculum, her favorites. She's kind of just lets everybody else, I guess, just flounder. I'm not really sure. But the girls who are her favorites, who are sort of in her clique, she teaches them strange life lessons about, she talks about her travels. She talks about her relationships with men. She talks about different experiences. And she also sort of, I want to say she like names or gives like a role to each girl in her clique, right? Like there's the girl who's good at math, there's the girl who's going to be a looker and break all the boys' hearts. There's the loyal one who she's closest to, and there's a scapegoat as well. There is a young woman who ends up kind of being the group scapegoat. Like she's in the clique, but that's her role. And so I'm not even sure how to talk about it. I think it's a book that I would like to reread. And it's written in a kind of, it's almost written in a like a young, I want to say like a young adult kind of way. It's told very simply in a way. And there's a lot of repetition. Like we do hear, that Miss Jean Brodie is in her prime. This is a phrase that gets repeated by Jean Brodie herself and also her students and other people in the book over and over and over again. And Jane Brody is somewhat enamored of fascists and fascism, that was something I did not get a chance to really unpack. I felt a bit bewildered as I read this book, even as I snickered and I wondered at what Spark was doing, and it's definitely a book I want to revisit, like I said, because I feel like I didn't quite get it, honestly, and I need to go back and reconsider what's going on in the book. And also in the book, I should say, Jean Brodie is constantly in trouble with the headmistress of the school. And eventually she is sort of ratted out by somebody in her clique. And or who's, around her. And she's constantly trying to figure out who it is that has basically ratted her out and who eventually ends her teaching career or at her teaching career as she knows it. So yeah, an interesting little book. My first Muriel Spark. If any of you have read this or if you've read other Muriel Spark, you would suggest to me. I would love to hear suggestions. But yeah, I will look forward to hopefully rereading this at some point because it was very interesting. The next book that I have on my list is The Blue Fox by Sjon, I believe is how you pronounce it. Probably mispronouncing it. He's an Icelandic writer, a contemporary writer. This is a slim little fable, an interesting book. It's about, it's set in the 19th century. It opens with a man who is hunting a blue fox, and he is out hunting, and he ends up kind of obsessively chasing this blue fox. And to his detriment. And it then switches from that to the past, and we get the story of another man who knows the man who's chasing the blue fox. And this man, we get the tale of this man finding a young girl who has been, she's a young autistic girl who is locked up on a farm, basically being treated like an animal, and he rescues her and he takes her home, and we learn the connection between that man, the girl, and the man who is hunting the blue fox. And it's it's a sort of a meditation on cruelty and care and kindness and maybe on nature getting its revenge, sort of, with it being a fable and whatnot. It's translated, I'm not sure who the translator is, and if I'm not even sure I would be able to pronounce it if it's Icelandic. Let's see. No, the translation is by Victoria Cribb. And I think Sjon, he is well known in Iceland. And he's also written, I think he's also written songs for Bjork. Yeah, he co-wrote some lyrics for a Lars von Trier film with Bjork. That's what it was. So if you're interested, if you like fables, if you're interested in something to read for translation, if you're looking for something for reading around the world, and you want something for Shorty September, something short for Icelandic literature, this is a lovely little book to pick up. Beautiful imagery, just a lovely little story. Okay. I know I said I was going to go fast, and I am going pretty quickly. Okay. The next book. Okay, I'm going to post, I'll post in the description box below an interview that Sjon at Sjon Breathes Books did with this author who is Virginia Evans. And this is her book, The Correspondent. And I don't think I have to spend a great deal of time on this because this book, I think everybody has heard about this book. It really has blown up this year. This is Virginia Evans's debut novel. She was, I think she's 39 or 40. And it's her debut novel. And it's so fascinating because in all the interviews that I've read with her and in the interview that Sjon does with her, she talks about this. This was her 9th novel. And I think she had self-published some of her earlier works, or had considered self-publishing some of her own earlier works because she just felt like she wasn't having any luck. But this was her 9th novel, and this was the novel that made it. And boy, oh boy, has it made it. And you're like, okay, great. What's it about? This is about a woman named Sylvia van Antwerp. She is a woman, and when the book starts, I believe she's in her early 70s, and the book covers a decade of time. I think it starts in 2012 and goes to 2022. And it's her correspondence. It's her correspondence. And so she writes to everybody. She writes to her brother. She writes to her daughter. She writes to her ex-husband. She writes to friends. She writes to her best friend. She writes letters to the editor. She writes letters of complaint to people. She writes to a local university. She writes to Joan Didion. She writes to Larry McMurtry. she just, she has the bug. And she loves to write letters. And she just believes it's a lost art form, a lost communication form. And I have to admit that when it first started, although I really liked the writing, I was worried that it was going to be kind of twee. I was worried that, oh, she's just going to be kind of a dotty old lady who writes letters to people, and it's going to be like all of her dotty little letters, which, that's fine. Actually, I would probably enjoy that. So I don't know why I would be taking on that attitude. But I think maybe I just was like, yeah, okay. That'll be fun to read, but it ends up being so much more than that. She is a very deep and different sort of character. She's not at all twee or easy. She's quite a hard character. But she is also lovable in her own way. And it's just a beautiful unfolding. And I love a good epistolary novel. And this was a good epistolary novel. Believe the buzz on this one. I mean, I loved every word of it. I will probably reread it. I've got the UK edition, and it's got the book club sticker thing on it. This is, I think, the BBC book club. Yeah. Yes, the BBC book club. Anyway, I like the American cover better. It's got the little bird on it, so I'll pop it up so that you can see the difference. Believe the hype on that one. It is absolutely fantastic. Okay, one more book. So I should say I have been trying to keep up with the Read Good Challenge that is hosted by Ben Reads Good, the 2025 challenge, and the October book. And I think I had said that I think I said this back in Shorty September. This was my September book. It was a book with a blue cover for that challenge. For October, it's Ugtober. It's a book with an ugly cover. I tried 3 different books with ugly covers and DNF'd all of them. But so I was chatting with Allie about this, and I was saying, I tried and tried to get a book in for this, and I feel bad because I've kept up with it all year, which is just not like me. And, I said, well, I did read this book, and I have to admit that I don't like the cover. I think it's kind of ugly. And that book is Heart the Lover by Lily King. And she was like, oh, just do it. Just use it. If you don't like it, just fess up. So I'm going to count it because for some reason, I just do not like this cover. I like orange. I like the colors. There's just something about it that bothers me. I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, Heart the Lover is Lily King's latest novel. It came out early in October. And it's the story of a young woman the book starts when she's in college. And it has the most wonderful first line, which I believe is, "You always knew I would write a book about you." I believe is something along those lines. And so it just starts out and you're wondering who's she talking to? Who's she writing this book about? And when the book begins, she's a young woman in college, the narrator, and she remains unnamed throughout much of the book, except that she meets 2 young men in an English class, and they begin calling her Jordan, based on Jordan in The Great Gatsby. And so she meets these 2 young men, and she begins dating one of them. And they have this relationship, and it's fine. And then eventually she ends up dating the other one, and they have their relationship, and it becomes a very significant relationship in her life. And then the second part of the book, it's much later. She's a married woman with children, and one of her children has an illness. He's dealing with, I can't actually remember exactly what it is, but it has something to do with his brain. I believe he has seizures, and he can have a surgery. Good grief. He can have a surgery to help relieve the pressure. I was trying to say he can relieve the pressure in his brain with surgery. He can have a surgery to relieve this pressure or this problem in his brain, but it's very risky. And so she's dealing with this, and she's married, and this is much later in time. She's a successful novelist. She's written several books. She hasn't written in a while. And we sort of get to hear her about her life, and then she gets some news about one of the young men from the first section of the book that she had a relationship with, and it makes her have to sort of go back, and she needs to go and visit this man and sort of deal with these past feelings and sort of be there for him. I don't want to give the plot away. It's like I am being so high level and generic about this, and I'm sure that other people have talked about the book. There is some talk out there that this book has a connection to Writers and Lovers, and it does, sort of. But I would say this, as somebody who loves the book Writers and Lovers, I absolutely love that novel. I think I've read it 3 or 4 times. You can read Heart the Lover and just pretend it has nothing to do with Writers and Lovers, because quite honestly, even though technically this book, as I think Olive actually said this about it, it sort of hugs Writers and Lovers in terms of it has the before and the after of a certain character in Writers and Lovers. It really doesn't. There are some serious continuity problems. So you heard it here. You heard it from me. I would just treat them like different books. I'm a little baffled as to the decision that Lily King made. Although she said in an interview that I listened to that she sort of just came to her, and she made that decision on the fly, very near the end of writing the book. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why it stayed that way, but it did. Anyway, that's my opinion on it. You can read them as 2 separate books. I probably will reread Heart the Lover. I will say, especially the first half of Heart the Lover is such a wonderful account of somebody who is young and in love. Really just so well done, and someone who's thinking about the future, someone who's trying to like wonder what will happen, but also who's so wrapped up in their present, and also sort of maybe thinking hoping this present can go on and on. Although at the end of the first section, the character makes a decision that also seems sort of didn't seem to jibe with who the character was, or kind of there's a trope there, a miscommunication trope that happens that I didn't think really needed to be there, but I don't know. I'll probably reread it. I didn't love Writers and Lovers the first time I read it, so but it's still Lily King, and I do love the way she writes. Her stories, her books don't always work out for me, like in terms of what she's decided to do, or how she's decided to pace or structure certain things, or decisions that she makes. I'm not always there. Like with her book The Pleasing Hour, which was her first book, I sort of was like, why this, why that? But that's okay. I love her writing. Like at a sentence level, I just really enjoy how she manages language. I love that she's a very literary writer and a very literate writer, that she loves to reference writers and books in her writing. That is just very enjoyable to me. So if you haven't read that, but you're thinking about it, I would say definitely give it a go. And let me know. Yeah, let me know what you think. So that's it. Whew, man, that's long. Okay, this is a long one. I apologize for the length. If you're still here, I appreciate it. I really do. And we will move forward from this point on and hopefully not get into this point again or into this situation again. But I'm not guaranteeing. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know if you've read any of these or you're going to read any of these. And I hope that you have a good weekend. Take care of yourself out there. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'll see you again soon.